Yeah, Oracle 30,000, Amazon 16,000, Block 4,000. So many different tools require different things to be connected to each other, and at any point with any update, things break. Such fast pace, you need such flexibility in all these jobs. Greed and power grabbing is rewarded. Very pessimistically, I'm curious to see what happens in the future. What's going on, everybody? Radio here, and we are back with another reaction. Today, we have for you MIT just found the cause of AI bubble from Economics Explained. Before we get into it, kind of wanted to give my thoughts. Do I think we are in an AI bubble? Obviously. If you just look at everything, it is pretty obvious that there is a economics bubble that is happening around AI. But do I think the technology is here to stay? Yeah, I definitely do think that. It's a very useful technology in a lot of sense, and it can be applicable across the board. Plus, we haven't even hit the ceiling yet with what can be achieved with this technology. If you think about the internet, when it first started, it was just text on the web, but it was text that anybody with a connection could access to. And then it moved on to pictures, it moved on to videos, and now we're at a point where you can pretty much stream anything on your computer with an internet connection. You can log on to a different computer across the world with an internet connection. You can stream video games with the internet connection. You can develop with an internet connection, and you wouldn't need any sort of hardware anymore for it. So, and that's all came from that initial concept of the internet. It grew into the dot-com bubble. That bubble burst, but the fundamentals stayed the same, and the fundamental technology kind of persisted throughout the bubble bursting and then the recovering and all that. So that's kind of what I think about the AI bubble at this point. I think a lot of companies going to lose a lot of money because of what they promised. And there are several companies that are way overvalued. But at the same time, they are working on the infrastructure that will sustain AI in the future. Is it going to be as big of an infrastructure as they're pretending it to be? Not pretending, as they're saying it will be. I don't know. But with all the data centers popping up, with kind of everybody and their mother trying to start an AI company, I think it's safe to say that at least for a little while, this mania is going to last. So, all right. Well, that's kind of my initial thoughts. But let's get into the video.
If you have read a single headline about AI in the last 2 years, you already know which jobs are supposedly under threat. Programmers are being laid off, junior developers can't find work, and tech companies are freezing hiring because one AI tool can now do the work of a dozen entry-level engineers. The discourse is loud.
I think I was watching another Mobitar video. We reacted to one of his videos a couple days ago, but he was saying that he thinks these layoffs are temporary, and because the quality of the code that AI is writing is really bad, there's going to be a massive shift back to real life developers, regular human developers, because those are the ones that actually know code. And the younger people who are learning code with AI and are kind of vibe coding their way through development and through software are going to have massive blind sides that only real developers with real knowledge can fix. So it'll be very interesting to see at least a year from now, 2 years from now. And I definitely do want to see, because a lot of the AI apps that are coming out are very fresh, very new. So they have not been kind of tested like rigorously throughout the years against attacks, against exploits, against any sort of malicious activity. So it will be very interesting to see how can they stay strong in the face of that. Now, there is the supposed Claude Mythos that is supposedly like the most strongest AI ever that can fix lots of bugs that's been around for years, and it's a beast in cybersecurity and all that. We made a video about it, by the way, so you can go check that out as well. Is the solution to AI apps being vulnerable is AI fixing the vulnerabilities, a smarter AI fixing the vulnerabilities? So you use the base AI to build the app, and then you apply the smarter AI to fix the vulnerabilities? Maybe, but who knows at this point, because everything's so fresh and so new. So a lot of it is speculation.
Anxious, and honestly, a fair bit of it is justified. But according to a new study out of MIT, it's also almost entirely focused on the wrong thing. Most people, and most headlines, treat AI as something that replaces jobs, but that's not how it works. More often, AI replaces the tasks inside them. A lawyer doesn't disappear overnight, but the hours they spend reviewing routine contracts might quietly shrink. A journalist keeps writing, but the time spent researching background, pulling quotes and fact-checking starts to compress. And while that might sound like a softer version of the same story, it definitely isn't. Because our entire economic system, the way we measure work, track productivity and plan for the future, is built around jobs, not tasks. GDP, unemployment figures and wage data were designed to count jobs and people, and they do that reasonably well. But they were never built to look inside a job and ask which parts of it AI can already technically perform. So, the change doesn't show up where we're looking for it. By the time the disruption shows up in the official numbers, it's already well underway, and every plan governments have made to...
Let me know if you guys are replacing some of the tasks in your job with AI. My day job, it's a lot more hands-on, a lot more physical. Some aspects of it, if I have a question, a technical question, I will ask AI. I work in manufacturing. If I have to write something up and I want to clean it up, I give it to AI just to make it more presentable to the higher ups. But overall, the main components of my job, which is get stuff, build stuff, and deliver stuff, get stuff, test stuff, and record the results, all of those are not replaceable AI because you have to do the physical task in real life. Even if it's like a super smart robot, there's so many intricacies in my day-to-day that it's just impossible. I don't see, like, it's got to be like the most genius robot with the nuclear brain just so it could be at, like, it could gear shift the way you would do at like a normal job. Like I'm thinking about something like a warehouse logistics, right? The tasks within that could be done by AI, but a lot of times things go wrong and parts are in a different bin, parts are in a different location, parts supposedly are here but they're not here. You need to communicate with teams in other locations, you need to follow up, you need to check in, you need to make sure your employees are delivering and doing their jobs right and they're finishing the quota and tasks for today. And if something goes wrong, you have to kind of go back and fix it. You have to kind of go back and make sure everything's done right. So all that due diligence, I don't see AI kind of following up and try to make sure that things are done right, you know? I don't see AI trying to track problems throughout the week, throughout the month, getting data points, then setting up a meeting to solve them. Because it's just such a specific problem to that specific job and to that specific group and to that specific plant. And you need to coordinate with like 6 other people just so you can all sit down and kind of get stuff done. So I do wonder how much of our daily tasks are going to be replaced by AI. I can see the communication, the emailing and stuff, but AI has a tendency to be very verbose. I'm saying that as I'm fucking yapping. And I wouldn't want to send the email that's just like a, hey, can you check this? Thank you. Or I wouldn't want to send a message that says, hey, can you look at this order? Thank you. With AI, because AI is gonna over-explain itself, and it's gonna be too much to read. And then the person I'm corresponding to, they're gonna use AI to read that text. So we're just using AI for no reason to communicate. So yeah, I'm just trying to think like what tasks at my job could be replaced by AI. And yeah, let me know what you guys are doing that AI is kind of doing for you at this moment and all that. If you're a developer, how much of the code you're writing, reviewing, and how much of it is just generated by AI and being implemented, how much of the reviews being done by AI and all that. Yeah, I'll be very interested to hear that.
Prepare their workforces has been built on instruments that are pointed in the wrong direction. It's a bit like trying to navigate a new city using a 30-year-old map. The streets look familiar, but nothing is quite where you'd expect. This is exactly why a team at MIT decided to build something new. Not another prediction of which jobs will disappear, but an actual map of where AI capabilities and human skills currently overlap, weighted by the economic value of that work. They called it the Iceberg Index, and the name turns out to be exactly right. When you measure the work AI can technically perform across the tech sector, it accounts for about 2.2% of total US labour market wage value, roughly $211 billion. That's the visible tip of the iceberg. But when you apply the same methodology to the whole economy, the number jumps to 11.7%, roughly $1.2 trillion, and 5 times larger. That's the part underwater. And it includes highly educated, well-paid professionals in industries and sectors that haven't generated a single anxious headline about AI. So, as always, we've got some important questions to answer. What exactly is the Iceberg Index, and why does asking about skills instead of jobs change everything? What does the index actually reveal about what's going on below the surface, and how much of the story we've been missing? And finally, what happens to the workers and industries that AI simply cannot touch? And why is that answer a lot stranger and a lot more expensive than most people expect? Running a small business means wearing every hat. Sales, purchase...
I think that last question we just talked about. I was just talking about it. Certain jobs that are way more applicable in real, that way more interactable in real life, you would need like a very sophisticated interface for the AI to work with so that they can do that job, right? Even in manufacturing, yeah, there's some assembly lines that like robotic arms are kind of doing the work and all that, but all it takes is one thing out of place, and then the robotic arm either stops working or it can't solve the problem itself because it's trained to do one thing very, very well, and it's trained to be as efficient as possible in that one thing. But you still need problem solvers there kind of monitoring everything and making sure that everything goes right. Now, I'm not making an excuse that like, oh, that's why AI can't replace jobs. And there could be like a breakthrough tomorrow that we achieved God level status in intelligence, and we're just gonna put it in a robot body, and it works with like a gallon of gas. You give it a gallon of gas, it runs for like a year. It's like it could be these breakthroughs. But as of right now, it's just it feels so impossible with a lot of jobs that are based in real life and a lot of low level regular people jobs that just AI cannot possibly replace because there's no application for it, right? At this moment in life, or like a server at a restaurant, that's just such a volatile job, and everything can change within like a second. You gotta talk to this table, you gotta talk to that table, something goes on in the other table. You have to work with your coworkers, you have to help them out. Within 30 seconds, something goes on that you gotta run the food for somebody else because they're doing something else. And same with the people in the back of the house, same with the chefs and the cooks, and the dishwasher maybe could be replaced if, again, we find the device that's like excellent at washing dishes and all sorts of different dishes. But the people who make the food are harder to replace because things change within a dime, and you got to be super flexible with the way you operate. You can't just... I could see a AI chef maybe within 5 years if the robotic body is excellent and they can adapt to situations in real time. They don't like... Because human processing happens so fast, and within seconds, you can adapt and change what you're doing. I don't see AI coming out of its routine and trying to adapt and change to real-time changes that fast. Everything's going to be walking in molasses because the AI has to process and start a new routine. But humans are so easily can shift from one job to another, and they can be flexible. They can help somebody out, then go back to the work they were doing. And then the delivery comes, they got to go back, do the delivery for 10 minutes, come back, pick up what they were doing again. And yeah, I just don't see AI doing all that stuff. Yeah, what other jobs do you guys not see AI replacing? There's gotta be a lot of jobs that AI can't replace. But at the same time, those are the jobs that right now pay the lowest. And those are the jobs that are more difficult than a regular job that people are sitting down at an office and kind of responding to emails and kind of working white collar jobs. So yeah, I'll be interested to hear what you guys...
Every major economic transition in history eventually forced economists to build new tools to measure what was actually happening, because the old ones simply weren't designed for the new reality. In the industrial era, output per hour had to be invented because nobody had a way to capture physical productivity at scale. In the internet era, GDP ran into a rather embarrassing problem, which is that it could measure the value of encyclopedias sold in shops, but couldn't measure the value of Wikipedia, which replaced them altogether. So the US Bureau of Economic Analysis eventually had to build an entirely separate accounting framework, the Digital Economy Satellite Account, just to capture the value of services that existed outside normal market transactions. MIT is arguing that the AI era calls for a similar overhaul. Intelligence is now a shared input between humans and machines, and the tools we inherited were simply never designed to measure that. The Iceberg Index is MIT's attempt to build something that is. So how did they actually do it? Well, they started by creating a digital representation of 151 million American workers spread across 923 different occupations and 3,000 counties. To map the skills each occupation requires, they use something called ONET, a database maintained by the US Department of Labor that breaks down hundreds of occupations into their actual component skills and tasks. Things like analysing data, critical thinking, interacting with computers, programming.
Those are all the skills you see in in Indeed and all that. These are all the skills you see getting endorsed in LinkedIn, dude. Oh, man.
And coordinating with others. And in the database, each of these skills comes with an importance rating and a difficulty level built from surveys of real workers doing those jobs. So instead of saying there are 4 million accountants in America, the database is saying, here are the 37 specific skills accounting work requires, here is how important each one is, and here is how difficult each one is to perform. Which is either a very thorough way to think about employment or a very bureaucratic one. But either way, it turns out to be extremely useful. Then they did the same thing for AI, cataloguing more than 13,000 real production-ready AI tools that exist and are being deployed inside companies right now. From coding assistants and document processors to financial analysis software and workflow tools on platforms like Zapier. And crucially, they put every single one of those tools through the same ONET skill taxonomy. So you end up with a profile of what each AI tool can do, expressed in exactly the same language as the human workers. Now you have two maps using the same framework, and for the first time you can make a genuinely apples-to-apples comparison between what human workers actually do and what AI systems are technically capable of doing right now. The result is a single number for each occupation, a percentage that measures how much of the wage value inside that job AI can technically perform. And the word wage value is actually the most important design choice in the whole study, because rather than asking how many accountants might lose their jobs, they asked how much of the economic value that accountants produce comes from skills AI can already perform. An accountant might spend 60% of their time on document processing and data entry, and 40% on complex judgment calls and client relationships. Those are very different things, and treating them as equivalent would tell you almost nothing useful. Because automating 60% of someone's time doesn't mean automating 60% of their value. Weighting by wage value, on the other hand, means the index reflects where the actual economic exposure sits. Now, there are a few things the Iceberg Index deliberately does not do, and it's worth being clear about them. It doesn't account for physical robotics. For now, this is purely about digital and cognitive AI tools. And
that's a little bit further out for now. It'll be very interesting to see first type of jobs that are being replaced by robots. I think Amazon's doing something similar. That they really pushing hard. They really trying to train their robots just so they can. The turnover at the warehouses are so much that they desperately need these robots kind of replacing all their workers because they can't just sustain that much of a turnover. And it's very interesting is that there was stats coming out that like Amazon was having trouble hiring people. This is a couple years ago, so it might be off now. But Amazon was having trouble hiring people because so many people worked for Amazon and quit. They don't want to work for it again. So that high turnover kind of slowly pushes you to automate as much as you can and delegate tasks to robots and AI. But that's very interesting. That's very interesting because most of the arguments, what he's talking about, the value of tasks being automated, that's an interesting point. Because usually you hear, oh, jobs are getting replaced by AI, and we don't need as many of these developers and all that. But at the same time, certain tasks in their workflow just cannot be done by AI, and they're complex tasks that require human intervention and require human delegation. And until we can have the AGI that can replace that, and maybe we will never get it, even though the scaling in the future, even though AI scaling has proven that with enough compute, AIs are becoming more intelligent, there might be a ceiling to that at some point. We don't know. So it might be very premature to say, oh, some of the tasks in your jobs are being automated, so you gotta do more of this other type of tasks, and we're gonna let go of your co-workers so you have even more to do. just because we're trying to save money and we know you're not doing much. So you got to fill your time up.
Measures technical capability only, not outcomes, which means it doesn't predict job losses or forecast when any of this will actually happen. What companies do with this information, when they do it, and whether regulators allow it, none of that is in the model. Think of it less like a weather forecast and more like an earthquake risk map. It tells you exactly which buildings are sitting on a fault line, not if or when the tremor will hit. So, what does the map actually show? It starts with the part everyone already knows about. In 2025 alone, more than 100,000 job losses were linked to AI restructuring. AI is already writing more code every day than every human developer on the planet combined.
Which is, I'm still suspicious of that. Still, at this point, some jobs, yeah, sure. If it's like the basic, most low-level developer jobs, and you find the AI that can replace them, yeah, I can believe that. But a lot of times, they just letting go of like enormous numbers of people, and they're saying, oh, it's AI, we're trying to automate, blah blah blah. But I think it's just that they're trying to save overhead. I think they just want to make their margins look better. I think they're just spending too much money and they just want to cut back costs. It has nothing to do with AI. They're using AI as an excuse to let go of these people and to kind of save their own, kind of clinch their own purses. And it's very suspicious that this many people are getting displaced in tech, and AI is still at like such an infant. The AI is at its infancy, and we still haven't seen like really earth-shattering progress since like GPT 3.5, and everything's so incremental. But these layoffs are happening in massive waves. I think, what was it? Was it Oracle layoff? Yeah, I think it was Oracle. It was an Oracle layoff, cutting 20 to 30,000 employees. Yeah, it was Oracle. Yeah, Oracle 30,000, Amazon 16,000, Block 4,000, Meta cut 10% of their reality labs, Snap 1,000, GoPro 23% of their staff. It's just insane. Yeah, fucking crazy, dude. Yeah, Oracle reportedly cut nearly 30,000 employees to restructure for AI and cloud. Wow, and that was recent. Yeah, I am suspicious.
And
I am very suspicious to see what happens.
already know that when you measure the wage value of the work inside those tech jobs that AI can technically perform, it comes to about 2.2% of the entire US labour market, roughly $211 billion across 1.9 million workers. This is where almost every headline, every policy paper, and every anxious conversation about AI and jobs has been focused. But 2.2% is a misleading place to stop.
Well, that's the top of the iceberg.
Is just the visible tip of the iceberg. But the capabilities driving that number, skills like document processing, routine analysis, and data handling, don't belong just to tech. They show up across hundreds of occupations that would never appear in a headline about AI layoffs. The same capabilities that make a coding assistant useful to a software engineer overlap heavily with the work of a financial analyst, an HR coordinator, an insurance claims processor, and a legal secretary. So, when you run the index across all the skills, that's where you see the number jump from 2.2% to 11.7% of the total US labour market, or roughly $1.2 trillion in wage value. This means the anxiety about AI that's been dominating headlines for 2 years has been aimed at roughly 1/5 of the actual problem. The other 4/5 have been sitting on a fault line that no government, no company, and no individual worker has been preparing for. And the people sitting on it aren't who you'd expect. According to a separate Anthropic study tracking actual AI usage in professional settings, the most exposed group earns 47% more on average than the least exposed, is nearly 4 times as likely to hold a graduate degree.
That's what I was just talking about earlier, where the most exposed group are the ones that are making more money. It's just insane. You can see it's the hourly wages are higher, graduate degrees are higher, and it's just crazy. And I think that's gonna be a massive shift in people's spending power and buying power. I was gonna say it's very interesting to see in the future, but I kind of don't want to see it in the future. Shit sucks ass, dude. That's what I was talking about. The jobs that are most at risk are the ones that pay the most, and the white collar jobs that you don't really interface. You don't have IRL components that you're interfacing with.
In professional settings, the most exposed group earns 47% more on average than the least exposed, is nearly 4 times as likely to hold a graduate degree, and is 16 percentage points more likely to be female. In plain terms, anyone whose working day is built primarily around reading, writing, analysing, and summarising information. People who, by any reasonable measure, did everything society told them to do, and did it well. Now, the gap between what AI can technically do and what it's actually doing in practice is still enormous. And for the moment, that gap is what's keeping much of this exposure theoretical rather than real. For computer and math workers, AI is theoretically capable of handling around 94% of their tasks, but in observed professional use, it's currently doing
Let's
about
see where I'm at
33%.
in there. Production. Theoretical AI coverage, a little more than 20%. Okay. Still safe. I'm still safe, guys. Still safe. And the observed AI coverage doesn't apply to my job because my job is a little bit different. Also, I do repair, so that's also a part of it. My job. I do some maintenance, but I think they're talking about a different kind of maintenance. Okay, we're safe. We're safe for now. For now, we're safe. For I don't know about tomorrow, but for today, we're good.
And a similar pattern shows up in legal work, in architecture and engineering, and across many other professions. The technical capability is already there, but right now it's being held back by regulation, integration challenges, and the simple fact that most organisations still require a human to check AI's work. These are all friction points that may resolve themselves as tech.
It's not even that. There's so many different tools popping up everywhere. Most of them are vibe coded that you just cannot. It's so unsustainable to fully automate the entire workflow, because as soon as like a connection breaks, you have to go back and like double check it and all that. So you would just always need people to double check all the connections at all times, make sure everything's working properly, make sure there's nothing going wrong on a day-to-day basis. And it's just, yeah, you're replacing some jobs, but what you're doing is you're just creating more of a mess for yourself that you're going to spend more money on, not only API costs, but also you need you need expert AI technicians just coming in and fixing the crap that you set up to automate your workflow. So that's kind of another thing I have issues with automating everything with AI. Is it's like some of the goals you have, you would need like very specific software to talk to another very specific software, and that kind of connection is sometimes it's just impossible, at least for now. And unless there is a black box that comes out that says, okay, I can link to any software without them even having a point of connection, and I can make everything talk to each other. Until that point in the future, it's just so hard because so many different tools require different things to be connected to each other, and at any point with any update, things break. So it's just that's another bad thing about fully automating your entire workflow and trying to lay off as many people as possible just so that you can save some money and lower your production costs and lower your labor costs. Is that, yeah, in the beginning you will lower it and you will implement these solutions, but at any point of extra stress to the system, you're shit out of luck. Things might break, then you need to hire even more expensive group and teams to come in and fix it, and the consultants that gotta come in and figure out what the fucking issues are and how to better automate your workflow. So you're spending more and more money. The old school consultants are out the door, and now the new school consultants are gonna come in that just like they're trying to consult you on how best you can integrate AI into your workflow, and then ends up being their tools and the tools that they're getting paid to push and promote. It's just going to be a whole other thing. So yeah, I don't see it being as easy to just be a CEO and look at your workforce and look at what they're doing and say, okay, I got 10 lawyers and they all doing this amount of reading and this amount of this amount of writing and all that. But if they're doing it all with AI, I would only need 5. You would still need to, after everything's automated, you will still need them to push it. You will still need them to publish, send it around and all that. And those tools might break. Then you would need to spend the money you saved on laying off the 5 lawyers to hire a team to come and fix the stuff that's breaking.
Technology matures. And while the full exposure hasn't landed yet, the leading edge of it is already visible in the hiring data. IBM replaced a chunk of its HR department with AI tools, while Salesforce stopped hiring engineers and lawyers because, as its CEO put it, AI can do the work. Entry-level employment in AI-exposed occupations has already dropped 14% compared to the pre-ChatGPT era. And that's probably just the beginning, because job postings fall before employment. And entry-level job postings across the US have dropped 35% since January 2023. Now, if you had to guess which states are sitting on the biggest fault lines, you'd probably say California, Washington, and New York. But you'd be wrong. According to the Iceberg Index, South Dakota, North Carolina, and Utah show higher exposure values than California or Virginia, And yes, I know those aren't exactly the states generating anxious op-eds in the New York Times. The problem is, their economies happen to be heavily concentrated in administrative and financial work, which are the exact skills sitting in that gap between what AI can technically do and what it's currently doing in practice. California's workforce is diversified enough that the exposure spreads thin, but in states built around finance and back office services, the vulnerability concentrates. Tennessee makes this point most starkly. Its tech sector exposure is 1.3%, nothing that would trigger alarm bells in any standard workforce planning model. But its Iceberg Index is 11.6%, which means the white-collar workforce keeping Tennessee's factories running is 10 times more exposed than the tech sector everyone's been watching. Ohio and Michigan follow the same pattern. These states have spent years preparing for robots to take over the factory floors, but the white-collar disruption is arriving first. Which brings us to the most important finding. If the exposure is this widespread and this geographically distributed, why aren't the people responsible for preparing the workforce seeing it? A big part of it is simple. The tools they're using cannot see this kind of risk. GDP, per capita income, and unemployment, the standard metrics, explain less than 5% of the variation in Iceberg Index scores across states. In some cases, the relationship even flips, meaning states that look safest by conventional measures aren't necessarily the least exposed. At the same time, the states that look most vulnerable aren't necessarily the most at risk. That means the billions being spent right now on workforce preparation may be systematically aimed at the wrong places entirely. But that's only the picture for workers inside that 11.7%, the ones exposed to AI. What about the workers who aren't? Because according to Anthropic's research, about 30% of the workforce has essentially zero AI exposure. This includes cooks, mechanics, nurses, plumbers, bartenders, childcare work.
Which I was just talking about the cooks. It's such fast pace, you need such flexibility in all these jobs. As a mechanic, you need to know so much. And a lot of mechanic work is experience. So you wouldn't even know. You can be the most well-read and the most studious mechanic, but until you get hands on the job and you feel the nuts and bolts and you actually do the work, you would be only like a quarter of good as a regular mechanic. Same with being in healthcare. You could be the smartest and you could be the brightest student in your university and while studying healthcare, but until you get on the ground and actually help sick people, you wouldn't be nearly as good as somebody who's already doing the work. And it's just ridiculous. Not ridiculous, but it's just crazy to me that. Anyways, thank you for watching.
Because people doing physical, relational, hands-on work that no language model can replicate. Surely those workers are fine, no? Well, sort of. You see, there's an economic pattern that's been quietly working against these workers for decades, long before anyone had heard of a large language model. To understand the pattern, you need to go back to 1965, when a Princeton economist named William Baumol and his colleague William Bowen noticed something odd about the performing arts. A string quartet performing Beethoven in the 19th century required 4 musicians and about 25 minutes. A string quartet performing the same piece 1 century later required the exact same number of musicians and lasted about the same time. Nothing about the performance had gotten more efficient, no technology had come along to speed it up, and yet the cost of putting on that concert had risen dramatically, dragged upward by wages rising everywhere else as manufacturing, agriculture, and industry got more and more productive. As factories and other industries became dramatically cheaper and faster, they could afford to pay their workers more, which pushed wages up across the whole economy, and musicians had to be paid competitively to attract talented people into the profession. Even though the output, 4 people playing for 25 minutes, never changed. So, the cost per performance kept climbing. Economists call this Baumol's cost disease, and the clearest way to see it is to look at what happened to prices over the last 50 years. The things that got more productive, like electronics and computers, got cheaper, while the things that couldn't get more productive, like childcare, education, haircuts, healthcare, and legal services, kept getting more expensive. These are all industries where the work is stubbornly human. You can't make a nurse see patients faster or a plumber fix a pipe remotely. So the only way to cover the rising wage bill is to raise prices, and AI is about to make this much worse. If the Iceberg Index is right and cognitive and administrative work is about to get dramatically more productive, then the Baumol effect will accelerate. Over the coming years, a financial analyst processing documents with AI assistance might shrink a day's work into an hour, and a software engineer with the right tools might do the work of 3 people. But the nurse will still need the same amount of time per patient, and the plumber will still need to physically be there. Their output doesn't scale with AI, so the relative cost of their work keeps rising, pulled upward by a productivity surge happening everywhere around them. This matters because most of the work AI can't touch is essential. People don't pull their kids out of school because costs went up or skip the plumber when the pipes burst. Healthcare, education, elder care, and skilled trades aren't things people can just stop using when prices rise. And most of them are either funded or subsidized.
So basically, even if the wages of the white-collar workers go up, they would just spend it on the same things they would spend because the wages of the blue-collar workers and the social service workers also is going up. So you wouldn't see any sort of improvement in your wages. It would literally be one-to-one. You would just, you would spend the same amount that you are doing now in the future, but you just spend more. It would just be more of the same paycheck, or more of the, you get a raise, but it's more of that paycheck.
By governments that are already stretched thin. So workers who are safe from AI disruption may find themselves in industries that governments will increasingly struggle to fund. Now, I want to be clear about something. The Baumol argument is a reasonable extrapolation from what the study found, not a finding in the study itself. Because the Iceberg Index tells you where the skill overlap sits right now, not what firms will do about it, how fast governments will respond, or which workers will successfully retrain. Those outcomes depend on decisions that haven't been made yet. And look, transitions like this have historically created as many new roles as they have disrupted. The transitions that went best were the ones where people could see what was coming clearly enough to prepare. Today, governments and companies are making billion-dollar decisions about AI using tools that can't see 95% of the problem they're trying to measure. The map most people are using was drawn for a different economy. The Iceberg Index is an attempt to draw a better one. Whether anyone actually uses it is, as always, another question entirely.
Yeah, but here's my argument. That's a very optimistic way of looking at it, and I definitely do appreciate that. Things change, things evolve, and as many jobs as that get displaced, more new jobs are gonna come in their place. Like, I definitely get that, but at the same time, we live in a world where greed and power grabbing is rewarded, and being as selfish and narcissistic and being as evil as possible is being rewarded constantly over and over again. So if we take that pattern and apply it with AI displacing jobs, I think it's safe to say that whoever is making a lot of money with their companies and is trying to cut down on labor costs, production costs, trying to increase their margins, they would not want to hire new people. They would not want to add more to their workforce in the future. And we would need like entirely new jobs popping up that are totally not in even the same vicinity as the jobs that they lost. And if you look at it more and more, that's just what I'm wondering, is that more and more billionaires want more power. They want to stay in power because they know they can control a lot with their money. So why would they give up their money, or why would they want to help stimulate an economy that's already stimulating a population with their money, when this economy is already helping them getting rich and rich and richer? So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it, where there's just no incentive for the job creators to create more jobs. There's more and more of incentive to cut labor costs and increase your margins as much as possible. Like, I don't know, am I wrong? Like, let me know. Like, am I being too negative about it? It just doesn't make sense to me that, hey, I'm a $1 billion CEO of this company and I'm already laying off so many people, but maybe in the future there's going to be more roles available. Who knows? Like, I'm gonna definitely participate in that. No, I would definitely try to do whatever it takes to not hire as many people as possible. Like, that's just what makes sense to somebody who's a billionaire CEO. Like, I'm not saying this is what makes sense to me, but it's just, I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
But if they don't, the cost is a two-speed economy. One half dramatically more productive, the other steadily less affordable, with the fiscal pressure landing hardest on the exact services societies can't function without. Nobody can predict exactly how that plays out, least of all economists, though we did have a crack at it, exploring what happens when capitalism runs out of things for workers to do. The video should be on your screen now.
All right. Thank you to our friends at Economics Explained. That was actually very interesting. A little dense, but I kind of understood what they were talking about. And it was very interesting to see that this was the most interesting part, actually. This right here. Oh, they showed the map. There we go. This right here was the most interesting part, where states that you would think are affected are not being affected because they have a lot of more diversified roles in them. But states that you would think not be affected are the most affected, because the highest paying roles and the jobs that kind of stimulate the economy the most are the ones in danger. So that's good. I think that's going to be a wake up call for a lot of people, where just because you live in a state that might not traditionally be a tech state and a hub, you're still in danger if your job is more in line with what they showed here. You're still in danger if your job is more in line with, I feel so bad for the ladies. They work so hard, and they're gonna get screwed. Yeah, that sucks ass. But yeah, if you're kind of in this ranges, because you have a graduate degree, your job is different. You're more white collar. You're more analysis based. Your wages are higher. You might be more in danger versus somebody who's not. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. It's definitely a very interesting video, and very pessimistically, I'm curious to see what happens in the future. And whatever happens, I hope you guys take care of yourselves and make good decisions about your own futures, and you got everything covered. But for now, radio out.